missing someone. Love with all your heart. Missing someone. Love with heart.
What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. If some of you guys have been following me for a while, you might recognize this client. This is footage from an old YouTube video that I made about 8 months ago. This is a first time client, and as you can see by her hair, it is very dark and she has 100% gray, and I took this on as a full color correction. The footage on the right is what her hair looked like after the first session. I did a full day of like stripping out the color and trying to lighten it as much as possible, and that was pretty much how light she was able to get. After this appointment, she had been coming into me I would say like every 8 to maybe 10 weeks to do a bleach and tone to lighten her roots, to kind of get it to match the ends. Her ends were not quite ready to be lightened for the longest time, so we waited until her hair was fully healthy. So this is her hair today, 8 months later. We didn't touch up her roots for the past few months, and she had just been growing it out. So today, since her hair finally feels healthy, we are going to be lightening it. And when I do this lightening application, I am not going to be touching her roots. We're just going to be lightening that band that you can see in the mid area, and pretty much lightening her ends to try and get it as like silvery as possible. So I'm going to show you how I tackle this type of correction. And to be fair, this correction is very customizable. Like whatever I did on her, I would say really only works with her hair and her hair type and the amount of gray that she has. I considered all of those things before choosing the technique that I was going to move forward with, because this technique that I'm about to show you would not really work for everyone's hair type and everyone's gray pattern, and I will explain to you more on that as we go in. So you can see I'm taking pretty decent sized sections in the back. I started in the nape, and for my lightener I'm just using my Blonde Me lightener that I love to use on everybody. And my bowl that I first used, I did about 100 grams of just 6 volume, and I'm going in and I'm just kind of laying the hair flat, kind of like an open air balayage type of technique. And when I apply the product, I am intentionally applying the product on the darkest area first, because I want that to have a full heavy saturation, and then I'm just kind of feathering and painting like very softly around that band of hair. And what that's going to do is the fact that I'm doing a really heavy saturation in the darker areas, that's going to lift a little bit quicker than me just kind of feathering over the areas that I know are already light. So when doing this application and over the time of just me doing her hair, my whole plan was to do this eventually. Like after we did that initial correction, I was trying to think of a game plan so that I could retouch her hair and get it as easy, or just make my life a lot easier when I had to do this application. So in order to do that, I chose to do a bleach and tone to do her retouches in between her appointment, because I knew that I was going to later down the line lighten everything again and try to make it silver. The other option that I could have done was apply base color. If you look back at her old before, or like this before, you can see that this band that I'm trying to get out, it's about, I would say, like a level 7. So I could have easily used a level 7 permanent color to kind of cover her gray or like blend it, but I chose not to. And even though that would have been the easier route at first, it would have been the harder route when doing the application as I'm doing today right now. And the reason being is because when I did her bleach and tones all those times, I lifted her to about a level 9, and then I toned her down with a liquid demi back to a level 7 or 6.5, I would say, to kind of give her like a root shadow. Now, as I'm going in today and lightening that root shadow out, the root shadow, because I know the hair underneath there was about a level 9, it got lifted really nicely, it lifted really pretty. Now when I'm going in and kind of feathering up with my application, as I'm doing and taking out this warm band, I'm feathering up into that old root shade that I did previously with a demi on hair that was about a level 9, and I know that it will come out a lot easier. So if I were to have done a permanent color, like I said before, which was my other option, it would have been the easier option because I could have just slapped on a base color and then washed it out, and then that would have been done. But the problem that I would have ran into if I did a base color and then did this application like I am today is it might have made it a lot more stubborn for me to lighten that part. So I decided to do the bleach and tone even though I was technically going to be toning her darker, because when I do the full lightening application like I'm doing today, it would lighten out a lot easier and a lot more even and a lot less warm, because I know the hair underneath that it was a clean level 9 before. Another reason why I chose to do a shadow root with a bleach and tone over the permanent hair color was because even though I was going to be toning her roots to be dark, I knew that the demi would fade out fast. And as it fades out fast, it will get lighter. And as it gets lighter, when her roots grow in, because you can see how white they are, when her roots grow in, it would be a lot less harsh against her regrowth. Now, if I used a permanent color level 7, the permanent color level 7 would have just stayed a level 7 and given her a really dark line of demarcation compared to the line of demarcation that she has now. Because honestly, even though we did a shadow root, the shadow root did fade a lot and lined up a lot. It got pretty blonde, even blonder than I had expected it to, which again makes my life 100 times easier when doing this application, because now you can see I'm going in, and even in the front there's barely any color that really needs to be lifted out, and I'm able to use my lightener to kind of soften and get that old root shadow out. Now, the other thing that I want to mention is you're probably thinking that as I do this application, I might get some warmth because it's kind of like I'm feathering up, and the warmth might meet where I am feathering up. And in that case, yes, there will be some warmth, and I will show how I will tackle that later in this video. But the reason why I chose this technique was, one, it was going to be really quick, and two, because she had so much white compared to gray. Now, if a client had more gray in this, I probably wouldn't have taken as thick of a section, but because she is so white, as I'm feathering up into her white, it's gonna still blend really pretty, and you'll see later when I tone her, there's really not too much warmth there that really is super noticeable, because again, the warmth that we get is from the dark hair, and from what I see, about 2 to 3 inches from her natural, she has a lot more white hair than she does dark hair. So this is what it looked like after I was done doing her application. I didn't use a developer higher than a mixture of 6 and 20 volume. So I started off with 6 volume and then I bumped it up to 6 and 20. And honestly, for the rest of the head, that's all I used. I didn't even go up to 20 volume because she really did not need it. She just needed a little bit of lift. And I really did want this to lift nice and slow to kind of save the integrity of her hair. So once I realized that that middle band was starting to lift to like about a level 9, close and getting to a level 10, that's when I went in and took like small sections and I cross-checked. So you can see I'm kind of moving the lightener around where I've already placed it, and I'm just adding more fresh lightener into the areas that are a little bit warmer, that might need a little bit more saturation. You can see exactly where I'm adding that warmth. Exactly where I'm adding the lightener to the warmth and making that a lot brighter. And I'm keeping this kind of just open air, just like this, because I want it to lift nice and slow. I'm not going to put any heat on it because it's totally unnecessary. But I'm just going in and pretty much cross-checking all of my application because I did take on the thicker side of sections. This is really important because sometimes it is really easy to miss some areas. So this is just how I would cross-check before the whole hair is ready. And the reason why I chose to do this when it was a level 9 is because it still has some time to go to process. And so by doing this at this stage, it gives the warm spots to process and still lets the other hair has time to lift to a level 10 before you have to rinse everything out. And now you can see I'm kind of just more so feathering up. And again, I wouldn't really feather up or do this type of application if your client had any less white than this client. This just makes it a lot easier because of the amount of white hair she actually has compared to gray hair. If this was a client who had more dark than gray, I definitely would have done more of a really thinner slice platinum card on her. But because she was already so white and for the sake of time, I felt like this was going to be just fine on her, which it did. And I'll show you how I will blur out those lines a little bit. And of course, this is a full-on project that is going to take sessions to kind of perfect. But I would say that after today, her hair is definitely going to be blended way more better than when she came in, and essentially that is the goal, is that with every session her hair does get better. And you guys will see at the very end of this video that her hair blends almost super seamlessly with this technique against her natural gray. So after I finished this second application, I pretty much just let it process, and I just keep checking it every like 5 to 7 minutes, pinching the hair to see what level it really is, and then also doing like a health test, like pulling the hair and with tension and making sure that it's still intact and really healthy. And her hair throughout the whole process felt amazing, and I was super happy that we were able to even get this light. So this is what her hair looked like after we pulled out the foils. You can see that her hair is extremely yellow, and her roots, I didn't touch them at all. So I'm going to pre-tone her hair with some purple shampoo and let this sit on for a bit. On a lot of my natural gray blending or any type of grays that want to stay nice and bright, I always like to pre-tone with a purple shampoo because this is going to help me determine which hairs are level 10 and which hairs need to be toned first, aka the hairs that aren't a level 10. And this is just a really helpful tool to use before doing the actual toning. So after I did the pre-tone with the purple shampoo, now I'm going in with the real toner. So her real toner, after I did the purple shampoo, you can see the root is a little bit more yellow than those mids and ends. So I'm going in and pretty much toning that part first. The toner formulation is a mixture of the Pulpurite Rabbit toners, and I do like using a mixture of silver, violet, and moonstone for this, and I'm applying it directly onto the areas that I see are the most yellow. And then after that, I'm pretty much just brushing it through the mids and ends, as you can see. And this whole part is really visual based off of where there's more warmth to try and get it as even as possible. So when doing any type of gray or silver toning techniques or like during the toning process, I would say the key things that I'm looking for, especially when you're working on a silver, is, for me at least, I like a more violet based silver. So I will start to look for the slightest bit of violet tone in the hair. So once I start seeing the hair turning slightly violet, that's when I know it's almost ready, and I just keep checking in and seeing what needs to be toned more. So after I was done doing that rapid toner, I realized there was still a bit of warmth in the root area where I kind of feathered up with the lightener. So now I'm going in and just kind of root shade that top area to kind of blend into her natural root and just blend that little warmth of line of demarcation. So for this, I'm going to be using a liquid demi line, and I'm using a 6-1, which is a level 6 ash, and on a level like this, it's going to appear kind of like a medium toned gray and kind of get a little bit of that warmth out. And I'm leaving out the money piece because that piece is all white, but everything behind her hairline is pretty still kind of like salt and peppery, so that's where I'm adding in this root shade to kind of blend out that band. And I probably didn't leave this root shade on for too long. I probably left it in for about like 7 to 8 minutes, and then we washed her out fully and then dry and styled her. Alrighty guys, so here is the finished look. We were absolutely obsessed with the way that this turned out, and I seriously loved how her roots just look so seamless into this color that we did. You can see the slightest bit of the violet hue at her root, and that was really to kind of get rid of that warmth that was at the top that you could see before we had toned her. But this is going to fade out really pretty. She may or may not need another lightening session after this, but we're gonna just see how the toner completely fades out and then determine from there. But I would say, this being her second session lightening those mids and ends, this was amazing progress from where she started with, and I feel like the color really does blend so well into her natural gray. Like, based off of the videos and pictures and even just seeing it in person, it really did look like we colored her roots when in fact I didn't even touch them. So I was really excited to see this whole end result, and honestly I just can't wait to see how it fades out. There are some things that I definitely want to tweak for her next time, but that is all just a learning process with every client, because every client has their own type of custom color, and as they come in, it definitely does get a lot better. Alrighty guys, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in, and as always, I will talk to you guys next week.